Welcome back. All right, we're going to talk about the Boston Bruins. Yep, the Boston Bruins, who won the President's Trophy, had the best regular season in the history of the game, potentially. Depends on your point of view. I would still say that the Montreal Canadiens of the mid to late 70s, their regular season's more impressive. But still, for overall wins, 65, that's a new league record. 135 points, league record. 65, 12, and 5 is a great record. So for Boston, everything was great, and it looked like they were going to steamroll Florida until the comeback. They were up 3-1. Florida wins games 5 and 7 on the road and showed what road warriors they were throughout those playoffs. And Boston was the first victim on what became a great Cinderella run by the Florida Panthers. Now, Boston during the regular season, goal scoring, pretty high, 3.67 goals per game. I don't expect it to be that high this year. Keeping the goals against down is really, really important. 2.12 goals against per game. This is a team that down the middle is facing some challenges, so they're going to really rely on their defense and goaltending, I believe, this season. Their power play, 22.2%, very good. We'll see if that holds up. They still have Marchand, they still have Pastrnak. That should help their special teams numbers. 87.3% on the penalty kill. So the penalty kill was fantastic, which adds up because you've got Ullmark off to a fantastic season all the way through. And when a goaltender's in the zone like that, it is difficult to score during a power play. The most recent playoff appearance, of course, was 2023. The last time they won a round was 2021. So both in 2022 and 2023, they don't get past that first round. More disappointing, clearly, this past season than in the season prior against Carolina. Last time they won the Cup, 2011, against the Vancouver Canucks in that final. And that was their first Stanley Cup since the early 70s. First Stanley Cup in my lifetime. Their salary cap space, what salary cap space? So they lost a lot of players in the offseason, and the salary cap is the culprit. $429,166. That's how much cap space the Boston Bruins have. So for the Boston Bruins, honestly, absolutely tremendous regular season. They're going to have to adjust tremendously. I like Jim Montgomery as a coach. Maybe he can make the right adjustments. Who knows? So their top 5 scorers, David Pastrnak, fantastic season. He was their MVP. I'm not listing him as the MVP for this season, though, because I think for this year it could be a little different story. So 82 games for Pastrnak, 61 goals, 52 assists, 113 points. He was a big part of the reason that Boston got to where they did. Ullmark, one of the best seasons I've ever seen. Marchand was good. Bergeron was his standard best two-way forward in the game. But Pastrnak was amazing. Put the team on his back for large stretches during the season. Marchand, 73 games played, 21 goals, 46 assists, 67 points. It's likely Marchand's most productive seasons are in the rearview mirror, but he's still very good as a two-way forward. Great penalty killer. A lot of energy to his game, and should be productive for at least a couple more years. Bergeron, of course, is retired. 78 games, 27 goals, 31 assists, 58 points, and what was his swan song from the NHL. He is irreplaceable. You cannot replace Bergeron. I've seen articles on how will Boston replace Bergeron. I don't even click them. I just say out loud, they can't, and I move along. Pavel Zacha, 82 games, 21 goals, 36 assists, 57 points. May very well inherit that first-line center spot. Again, he's not going to replace Bergeron. Can he get to 65, 70 points? Sure, absolutely. If he's playing between Pastrnak and Marchand, he absolutely can. But again, it's not going to be the same. And then Krejci, he retires as well, or at least leaves, right? 70 games, 16 goals, 40 assists, 56 points. And I say leaves because he'll probably play in the Czech League at least. But at the very least, Krejci and Bergeron both announcing they're done as National Hockey League players. A huge blow to the Boston Bruins. They lose their number 1 and number 2 centers. From the goaltending perspective, and again, from wire to wire, the goaltending was darn near perfect. So Ullmark, 49 games, a 46-1 record, 938 save percentage, which means Swayman, who had a very good year, he took some flack. He ends up only 24-6-4 in 37 games and only a 920 save percentage. So by comparison, Swayman looked like a really good goaltender, but Ullmark was a world beater. So certainly when Swayman went in, there was certainly we have less of a chance of winning this one. And yet Swayman was quite good, and he's got himself a good contract over the summer, so all the best to Swayman. Kincaid made one appearance with the Bruins. He won that appearance, 968 save percentage there. So Kincaid, not a lot of appearances in the NHL in recent years, but he's pretty good when he's got that chance. Now, the channel vote is understandably doubting that Boston finishes first again. 12% of the channel has voted that Boston finishes first or second. 51% have them third or fourth. That's probably about right. 31% think Boston can fall as far as fifth or sixth. And if the center spot doesn't hold up, if the defense has its struggles because maybe they're under a lot more pressure, then yeah, I could see them going through quite the dive. 5% really don't like Boston and want them to finish seventh or eighth. Although of the voters, I would think there's probably about 25% that would be fine with them being seventh or eighth, and might be higher than that. At any rate, Carlo, amongst returning players, the highest hitter, 128 hits. Boston's not been an overly physical team, though, over the last few years. There's a player that's come back that may change that a bit. McAvoy led with block shots with 131 this past season. The most posts hit, Pavel Zacha, was 7. So Zacha will be getting more ice time. Maybe that means more posts, but at the very least, it should mean more goals. The additions to the lineup, they've added James Van Riemsdyk from Philadelphia. He's on the back nine of his career as well. They're looking for some scoring off the wings from him. Lucic brought in. He'll play on the fourth line. He'll provide some hitting. And we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes with him back in Boston. Patrick Brown for depth down the middle. Jesper Boquist, depth down the middle as well. Boquist, the younger of the two, I do believe. And so there's some idea that maybe there's a little bit of upside there. I don't know how much upside there is offensively, but if he can be that fourth line center, that's great. Morgan Geekie, who can play down the middle or on the wing. But again, a depth player. Kevin Shattenkirk, another player whose best year's probably behind him, but joins the Boston Bruins on their blue line. Ian Mitchell and Alec Regula came over in a trade from Chicago. They're both blue liners. And Alex Chiasson has signed a professional tryout with the Boston Bruins, meaning for him to win a contract, he kind of has to steal a job from somebody else. So we'll see whether or not he can do that. So the list of additions, I mean, it's not a bad list, but then you look at the list of exits. It is extensive. So Bergeron and Krejci, aforementioned, these are guys who were key pieces of that team for a very long time. They will be missed. Taylor Hall may not have been playing up to his contract necessarily, but they're still going to miss that production on the wing. Orlov was great after the trade from Washington. They could not afford to keep him. Bertuzzi, much the same. He gets acquired from Detroit, played very well, had good chemistry with the Bruins, but he doesn't end up signing with Boston. They didn't have any money to do it. Nosek ends up exiting as well. Hathaway exits. He was a rental at the deadline. Connor Clifton, they're going to miss his hitting. He was the number one hitter for Boston. Now he kind of becomes the number one hitter for Buffalo, so we'll see how that changes things on the blue line for Boston. Foligno is gone as well. He goes to Chicago. Mike Riley was bought out. So definitely some depth hits there. The defense has been kind of changed out a little bit. I don't see a huge weakening of their defense, but that forward group's going to be hurting. Comparatively speaking with last year, where just there was so much depth in so many spots. Now, in terms of the next one, it's hard to find the next one for Boston. They've been very good for a long time, and so not a lot of top-notch prospects. So I went with Lysell. Fabian Lysell, they've been talking a lot about him on their social media the last few days, and maybe there's some hype that he could make the team. His numbers in Providence weren't great, but Providence didn't have a great season, so maybe it's not reflective of his play. Fantasy sleeper pick, I went with Lauko, because Lauko has that really strong work ethic. And, I mean, maybe he gets a chance on a Boston team that could use a little bit of something more. And so maybe he ends up filling a third-line role with Boston and getting more points than expected. The MVP, I went with McAvoy. Even though Pastrnak, for me, is their best player, one of the best players in the league, I love Pasternak's game. But if Boston's going to reach the playoffs, McAvoy kind of has to be Norris level. And he's not far off from Norris level as it is, but I think for a Boston team that could have Zacha and Coyle as their top two centers, they're going to need that blue line to be absolutely fantastic if they're going to compete in the Atlantic, where some other teams behind them have gotten better during the offseason. Their schedule, pretty evenly matched through October in terms of home and away. November, a little bit different. Only 5 of their 13 games in November are at home. So they're going to have to win some games on the road. As I've been saying in these videos, that quick start, that really strong beginning to the season is key if you want to make the playoffs. So their .823 points percentage this past season, absolutely insane. I don't expect to see that again. All season I kept saying this number's too high. They have to lose. There has to be a losing streak of some sort coming because it's an 82-game schedule. But they did their best to avoid that, and they did. I don't think they lost more than 2 games in a row in regulation all season. They've been above 600 in points percentage for the last 6 seasons. I don't know if they're able to do that again this year. Again, the defense and the goaltending will decide that. The last season they were below 500 was 2006-2007. So it has been a while since this team put up a losing record. I don't anticipate that necessarily, but I don't see 65 wins either. They've been top 4 in the division for the last 8 seasons. So this is a team that definitely thrives during the regular season, and they expect a lot of success. During the postseason, they've had their last 2 runs to the final have not been successful, as 2013 and 2019. 2019, of course, they lost against St. Louis. 2013, it was against Chicago. They have Jim Montgomery, one of the better coaches in the league, going into his second year. If the Boston Bruins can stay top 2 in this division, Montgomery should absolutely be coach of the year again, I would think. Sweeney, still in charge. The debate over Don Sweeney and the job he does is always interesting to me with Boston fans, because the last couple of years I've seen a lot of why doesn't Boston go get, insert the name of a big name free agent here. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, they don't have the cap space for that player. But there is an expectation that Boston's going to make big splash moves and that Sweeney doesn't get those moves done, right? So this past deadline, I think, helped. But now you look at the amount of exits, you look at the additions, definitely the exits outweigh the additions. And so Sweeney's not under the gun. And yet at the same time, we've seen how quickly the Boston Bruins organization will make a change behind the bench if they're not happy with things. And so for Sweeney, I don't know how much pressure there'd be on him to stay in the playoffs this year. But again, Boston does expect that excellence. They've had a 7-season run of playoffs. I think they still make the playoffs this year. But notice I'm not giving it the 100%. Oh, they're clearly still a playoff team, because we don't know how it's going to be without Bergeron, how it's going to be without Krejci, how this team is going to go about things coming off of what was a record-breaking season and record-breaking heartbreak in the playoffs as a result. How do you bounce back from that? Are they going to be able to get up for those games in early October? Is it going to be a feeling out process with all new lines, right? A different-looking top 6? There are some question marks with the Boston Bruins. So let me know your thoughts. Do you think the Boston Bruins are going to stay in the top 2? Do you agree with the majority of the channel, that 51% that says 3rd or 4th? And I'm thinking most of them are going to say 4th, right? And then, of course, 36% of the channel say 5th or below that, which could happen because you've got Tampa Bay, you've got Toronto. Those 2 teams are going to be good. Florida should be very good as well. We're already up to 3, and then you've got Buffalo, who's only 1 point behind Florida. This could be a very tough division. I haven't even mentioned Ottawa and Detroit yet, so we'll see how things work out. This is going to be quite the season for the Boston Bruins, who still believe they have a chance. They still believe that they can put together a team that can compete for the Stanley Cup. Maybe they're better off as underdogs. We shall see. So are they still a playoff team? Let me know what you think. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.